Um, Amber Rose, will you look at Facebook and see if there's something worth? And Lily, would you share something from Twitter?
I have a great question from Twitter if we're ready.
Okay, but hold on one second. Gabe, take a look at the YouTube site. Okay, Lily, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So this comes from a person who says that this is their first webcast, so I want to say welcome. Oh, and it's the username Stefabulist, which I really like. And here's the question. I think it's like a two-part question. I think we'll really want to take up the second part, but it's a question about supermarket in California. Okay, so
hold on one sec. I'm going to do the thing of asking people in advance so they can listen carefully. Perfect. So how about Erica and Davey to respond to whatever this is? Perfect. Okay, go ahead, Lily.
Okay, so here's Stefabulist. In what ways is Ginsberg looking back, not just to Whitman, but perhaps the whole descent into the underworld trope, as we see in Rilke's Orpheus poems and Dante's Inferno? Okay, good scene setting question. Here's the one I think we'll want to take up as a group. Is the Ginsberg poem celebrating his and our ability to use the canon for our own purposes? I just really like that. Use the canon for our own purposes.
Great. Okay, so it's Davey and Erica, yeah? Okay, Davey first.
The way that it occurs to me to speak to this great question is to recall Gabe's really helpful answer to the question that was asking about the relationship between meta poems that are interested in language and poems that are interested in real life. And I think that the purposes that we see the canon being used for here is a kind of non-canonical usage, or at least in 1955, and that like queer Whitman was not the conversation that was being had about Whitman in canonical conversations about Whitman in the 1950s. And I think that we get, that's one of the ways in which we see a kind of queer ancestry of Whitman being taken up here. But I also think that, you know, Walt Whitman as a canonical figure belongs in the classroom, not in the supermarket. And I think that part of the way that we see Ginsberg's adoption of Whitman into daily life is to insist that the way where we see our poetic predecessors, and this is what's speaking to Gabe, your point earlier, is in the supermarket, that we live with poems and we live with the language of poems to constitute our own reality, rather than the canon only existing as a form of academic study. It exists as a form of companionship in daily life.
That's really cool. Thank you, Davey. And you know, I want to make a pedestrian, an easy, simple point on top of that, which is, you know, in 1955, writing a poem about a supermarket. I mean, poets, even academic poets, thought they should write about things outdoors and natural things, but it typically be things that are beautiful and not supermarkets. And so the kind of space it is different and radical, and then of course gets de-radicalized by the canon, as you pointed out. Erica, what are your thoughts about this?
I can't help but think about the ways in which that question points us to a reading of this poem that subverts the old anxiety of influence idea. Yeah. Where, you know, those who come before make you nervous. Instead, it's what Davey was saying about kind of celebrating a queer ancestry and taking poets who are perhaps associated with the canon and removing them from whatever kind of eliteness that might represent and placing them in places like the supermarket.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you. And also thank you to Stefabulous for the question.